So as Anastasia was saying, some of those accommodations could be physical, instructional, or behavioral adaptations that would provide the student with a change in environment, sometimes a change in the format they're receiving the curriculum in, or even the equipment that they use to access the content and complete their tasks. We'll learn more about this as we go on, but certain accommodations could provide the student with a change of the timing, formatting, setting, schedule, and response or presentations. These accommodations don't alter the curriculum in any way, really. They just change what has been made available to the student to ease their access to the curriculum. Let's see. So examples of accommodation. One example that I like to use is a student who is blind would receive a Braille version of a test. That doesn't change the curriculum or the content in any way. So recipients are not required to make adjustments or provide aids or services that would result in a fundamental alteration of the recipient's program or impose an undue burden. And unfortunately, that's one of the sticking points that you might recognize if you are familiar with having a 504 plan, is trying to kind of find some common ground with the school and see what they are going to be willing or able to provide.
So what might a 504 plan look like? The one here is one that is very similar to the one found in ECATS. While IEPs are based on a federal model, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act doesn't provide a standard form or template for 504 plans. Each school district, as we said before, develops its own plans. In fact, the law doesn't even require that the plan be written or have parent input. There's no standard 504 plan required by law like an IEP, and every school district handles it a little differently. It's very important because if you move districts, you're going to want to notify them that your kiddo has a 504 plan, and theirs may not look the same. Generally speaking, a 504 plan should include the following: specific accommodations and supports, name of who and where that accommodation is being provided, as well as the person responsible for the 504 plan. Every district should have a method for dispute resolution. You can ask your district what their general dispute resolution method is. And as a reminder, a 504 plan is for services and supports in the general education classroom. But when you're writing them, you want to think about the entire school day. You want to think about, will they also need those accommodations for specials? As well as, do they need any type of assistive technology? Those things all need to be considered, because obviously while we're in lunch, we may not need testing accommodations, but there are going to be some kids who need support for opening equipment, or kiddos who need special types of feeding, etc., that need to be considered.
Thank you, Anastasia. So next I'm going to share a video with you guys. And if anybody has any trouble accessing or hearing this video, please just let us know in the chat.
She will help row the boat.
For students with disabilities, the right accommodations and modifications can be as important to school success as appropriate IEP goals. These educational supports are similar, but they are not the same. Accommodations change how a student accesses information, participates in school activities, or demonstrates their learning. They do not change the curriculum. Modifications, however, change what is being taught or what a student is expected to learn and demonstrate.
I only need you to do the circled problems for me.
Accommodations can be made by adjusting the amount of work a student must complete, allowing extra time,
Just go ahead and turn your paper in. Okay, you can go ahead and keep working. You've got about 5 more minutes.
Adapting assignments,
Alex, I have your shapes here. Good.
providing extra assistance, or changing the physical setting.
Let's do one more page today.
There is no one set list. Because each child is unique, the IEP team must identify specific strategies to help your child succeed. For example, presenting a few math problems at a time may help a student who is easily overwhelmed. Another student might benefit from short breaks or being allowed to finish an assignment at home. A student who has difficulty writing may be allowed the use of a computer, while students with a print disability may benefit from having tests read aloud.
They went downtown.
A child can be given an appropriate role when working in small groups,
Where am I?
or be allowed to participate in an activity in a different way.
Beware of what? Excuse me.
Being seated near the teacher helps some students stay focused,
So we'll go ahead and discuss these in a minute.
and assistive technology can support a wide range of needs.
And if you need me, you can raise your hand and I'll come and help you. All right?
In addition to accommodations, it is sometimes necessary to modify the curriculum. For example, when the class is learning how to tell time, one child might be expected to identify only the hours. While the class is working on vocabulary and spelling, another child may work from a shorter list or focus exclusively on the meaning of key words.
Insects with 8 legs.
Parents play a vital role in crafting the IEP. After all, no one knows your child better. So at home, watch for what works and any struggles that continue. Talk to your child about what feels right to him or to her. Make sure the IEP team considers your child's needs throughout the entire school day, including classroom time, non-academic and extracurricular activities, and transportation. You are not expected to have all the answers. Other members of the IEP team will have much to contribute. You can help by making sure that all accommodations and modifications are clearly written into the IEP. Be sure to ask whether any of the modifications will impact your child's graduation. Ask questions, offer ideas, and bring up any concerns you may have. Open dialogue and clear documentation are essential to developing a high-quality IEP.
When he gets to middle school.
I didn't know it was this far from the lockers to the buses.
During the IEP meeting, we can talk about adding extra time to Sam's schedule.
Oh, okay, great.
So we've talked about quite a few modifications today.
Hemos hablado acerca de muchas modificaciones.
¿Hay un límite?
She wants to know if there is a limit.
No, however, we do want to be careful. If we create too many modifications, she may not be able to meet the high school graduation requirements.
No hay un límite.
Well, I know Tori likes being around other people, but she also has a hard time with conversation. So I was wondering, did you have, any other ideas that might help her with that?
Well, we could try a peer buddy, or we could work in small groups more often.
These are great goals, but Brooke's in the 6th grade and is only reading at a 2nd grade level.
This is true, but audiobooks should help her access to content better, and I think we might be able to find some textbooks that are at a lower reading level.
Tori always turns in her homework, but it's not always what was assigned.
Maybe if you can help her get started in class, she'll know she's on the right track.
Sure, I could do that.
I'm unclear who will follow up with each of these items.
I'll handle supports during basic instruction.
And I arrange for the seatbelt and keyboard.
Accommodations and modifications should change as your child's needs change.
All right, time for comprehension. If comprehension, then iPad. Are you ready?
Okay, guys.
You are not limited to a standard list.
Can we play?
So be creative and stay involved.
Can we go to the park?
I would love to go to the park, but you're going to study first, right?
Your child is counting on you.
Thanks for helping each other out. That'll be great.
Okay, so when we're looking at 504 meetings, who might it include? It could include a school counselor. It could include your child's teacher. Some districts will include a principal, but definitely talk to your 504 coordinator about who's going to be at those meetings. There is no federal funding. I want to point that out for on this graphic here. There is no federal funding for 504 plans. And so some districts can be reluctant about some accommodations, but remember, we're trying to provide equal access. And we need to be creative with our solution finding. Kids who are covered under Section 504 are not automatically qualified to get an IEP. If you think your child needs an IEP, then you would want to submit a referral for that as well. Some kiddos do not need specialized instruction, which is one of the most important parts about having an IEP. And so those are very separate processes. And if you're not sure which one, talk to your children's teachers and think about what they need. If your kiddo needs specialized instruction, then you're going to want to ask them about an IEP. But if they just need some testing accommodations, some extra time, special pencils, they need different types of writing utensils or eating utensils, they need access to their physical environment, or they need fidget breaks, wobbly stools, those types of things, those things are appropriate for 504 plans.
So this is one of my favorite slides to share with you guys. Here at ECAC, we are all really big fans of putting your communication in writing whenever possible. So who are you gonna write? It's important to know who to reach out to and when. For dispute resolution, like Anastasia mentioned earlier, each district may have their own process to follow. If your child has a 504 plan or you're interested in obtaining a 504 plan for them, it's important to know what the district's policy is on their dispute resolution. But as a general consensus, these are the folks who you would go to in order from top to bottom when you're having any issues regarding Section 504, or if you wanted to try and get more accommodations for your child or hold a 504 meeting. We like to start as locally as possible, which is going to be the child's classroom teacher. Next is the school counselor, which oftentimes may double as the school's 504 coordinator. And then there will typically be a 504 coordinator in the building. Sometimes for smaller schools, that's not always possible, and there's just a district level 504 coordinator. And then of course the principal. And then, like I said, if it is a larger district, then there's going to be the district 504 coordinator who you would go to after that. And after that, unfortunately, there's not usually too many options at the state level. So the next step would be filing an OCR complaint. Most of the time, though, issues can be handled, before getting to that point. But I would say that the parent educators at ECAC would really be a good place to start if you're looking at some of those higher level complaints, just to see what kind of options that you may have not considered yet.
And I listed it in the chat, but an OCR complaint would be a complaint filed with the Office of Civil Rights.
Oh, thank you.
Level. So we're going to go through some resources. We're not going to go through the very last one on this page because I know all of you can read. I know you're all excellent readers, and it is a guide put out by the Office of Civil Rights. It's a pretty comprehensive guide. They have also written a pretty comprehensive guide specifically for kiddos who have ADHD that would be worth taking a look at if your child has ADHD or if the students you're working with have ADHD. In addition, before we look at these resources, when you're starting to think about accommodations for your child, one of the things that you can do, some things already have amazing accommodation lists. The Diabetes Association has a 504 plan you can look at there. And there are some of these that are very specific to specific types of needs that are worth taking a look at. And if you contact our parent educators, we can certainly help direct you to that, as well as our standard accommodation supports, which we're going to look at in just a second. But we're going to start with this section 504 fact sheet. So this is a fact sheet that we developed. It is, it tells you what the law says, it tells you what the law protects, and what it requires of public schools, which is to provide students with disabilities access to a free and appropriate public education. And it gives parents the right. I want to stop right here. Parents have the right to be notified of decisions regarding eligibility or the content of their child's 504 plan, and they have the right to appeal these decisions. However, with an IEP meeting, you have to sign consent. You do not sign consent for 504 plans. And so while they do have to notify you, you don't quite have as many outlined rights as you do with an now a good team is going to make sure that you are part of the team and that your input is recorded, but it is not as legally protective of parents' rights as an IEP is. And again, it looks at accommodations, assistive technology. And remember, assistive technology is not always high tech. We're not always talking about voice to text devices or fancy iPads. Sometimes we're talking about a magnifying glass because the text is too small. Sometimes we're talking about a calculator. It's not always some high, or a recorder, like a little tape recorder. And not every kid has a 504. Sometimes there are situations that require 504s for brief periods of time due to sudden needs. For example, I won't name any names. It was me. I broke my arm. I broke my arm at a young age, and I needed some of these assistive technology supports for a while because I had a pretty complex break, but that's not always the case. Some kids will need equal access to their education for a lot longer period of time. And school services like nursing and adult assistance can be covered as well. And this is just good for those of you on this webinar who are practitioners, teachers, therapists. This one's just good to give families that you work with because it's a good explanation of what 504 eligibility is. We kind of went over all of this, so I'm not going to do it again because I'm sure that you guys can read. But we were going to send this out afterwards, as well as there is a similar one created by Understood that is a good reference as well. But what we're going to look at now is our accommodation references, and these are great for both families and practitioners because, again, it can be hard to think off the bat.
Okay, I can go over this one. So this is a sheet that ECAC can distribute, and I have oftentimes given it out to many parents who are looking for examples of what accommodations might work, especially if there's a school team that asks you what's been working at home, but you don't necessarily know. Sometimes I like to go through this with parents and talk to them about what some of their concerns are, because we might not realize that some of these activities that can be built into a 504 plan are things that we do at home without even thinking about it. It's also just a really easy way to come up with some ideas and try a few things before you really kind of narrow down what specifically works for each individual student. I don't have a need to go through each and every one of these accommodations, but these fact sheets will be provided to you guys in a follow-up email if you'd like to look through it for more specific details. And this one is 3 pages long, so there's quite a bit of a variety of different options that's in here. And I think that the next worksheet is one that I've also distributed quite a bit. And it seems to be a little bit more straightforward, but I often will hand them out in combination with one another. Sorry.
Let me pull it up just in case the link is.
Yeah, it looks like the. We'll get there.
It never fails for technology to fail, but that's okay. I'm putting it in the chat if you'll put it up for us, Brittany.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
I was going to say, I swear I sent you the right one. So this is a different accommodation list, though some are the same. Looking at environmental strategies, sensory breaks, picture schedules, creative timers. I had a family who they added a tablet so their kiddo could have access to a scheduling calendar that kind of synced with his school programs. Their behavioral, will you scroll down, Brittany?
Yep.
Organization strategies, that could be a planner that lists assignments. And when you think about these things, they can be pictures too. Some kiddos respond better to pictures. If they need a picture of their assignments, it's okay to ask for that. You can model and reinforce systems like color coding. They could have a peer buddy who they can check with about their assignments. Now, often what we see are testing accommodations. Those can be pretty broad. It can be extra time. It can be smaller group settings. And so as a reminder, all testing accommodations, whether for a 504 plan or an IP, need to be put into place before the test. Kids should not be using testing accommodations when they get a test. They need time. You need to know that that's what works. I mean, it's to throw a kid into an unfamiliar small group environment where they're confused isn't the best testing environment either. Presentation strategies. Not every kiddo can watch a presentation on the projector. Some kiddos need notes already done. Some kids can have fill in the blank notes. Some kids need a complete copy of teacher notes. It's talk to your teacher about what would be best for your kiddo. And then assignments. Remember, with the 504 plan, we can't change the intent and we can't change what is taught. But we can allow equal access. Sometimes that could be on a math worksheet, they do every odd number, but they still get the same practice. Talk to your students' team, talk to your kiddos' team about what accommodations they think, and then you guys can talk with us and you can look at the list and we'd be happy to provide support as well. And then we've got assistive technology here as well. And like I said, so you could see math manipulators on there. It's not always when I hear assistive technology, I'm thinking eye gaze devices, iPads, but it can be more basic books on tape, graphic organizers. Some kiddos respond really well to graphic organizers. It can be closed captioning. It can be headphones to drown out. School is loud. There's a lot of kids. You might need those headphones. Some days the teachers might need some headphones, honestly. Voice activated typing, voice to text, voice recorders. What each kiddo needs to access is still individualized. What they need to even their playing field is still individualized. Sometimes we see pretty standard accommodations across the board. So really take the time to think about what your kiddo needs, and we will be sending out these lists for you guys to look at after this. But you guys can always call us and we can give more specific advice about what we might think from what you guys say, as well as show you what other people use.
That is so true. And what I like to remember and want to leave you guys with also is you don't have to know all the answers going into it. There's always time to kind of see what works and then modify the plan later. You don't have to figure everything out in one 504 meeting either. So hopefully you guys will be able to use some resources to work with the team and then bring everybody back to the table again and try new things until you figure out what does work.
And it's not necessarily a finished document. Like these are growing, breathing, living documents. And things are going to change. Things can change in any number of directions, you know, as a kiddo may not need certain accommodations. And as they get older and more work is put upon them on different types of assignments, they may need more support. So it's really individualized to what your kiddo needs. So at this time, we have time for questions and answers. We will be sending out a copy of the presentation along with a copy of those resources, as well as a few others that we have on accommodations and 504 plans. But if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A. And then Brittany's gonna release our poll.
Yep. So while you guys are thinking about what questions you might have for us, because we are a federally funded organization, our funders like to hear that what we are doing is helpful to you guys. So if you wouldn't mind just to take a few moments to answer these questions for us, we would greatly appreciate it. And if you do see questions coming through the Q&A or chat, Andrea and Anastasia, let me know, because I can't really see the chat with the poll up. And I will go ahead and post our contact information here as well, so that those of you who need to notate that will have the opportunity to do that. And our link will come through in the follow-up email as well.
And definitely, if you have individual questions, specific situations, feel free to reach out to us by the contact form that she's going to send. Because it, you know, while in a public webinar like this, you may not want to tell everybody what's happening, and we'd rather discuss those privately and individually with you guys. So feel free to reach out to us. I think this webinar started to be recorded about halfway through. We will have another one that would probably be better to send out, but if you want a copy of this one, we will send that one out as well. So in terms of telling whether a student needs a 504 versus an IEP, if you're not sure, I would definitely talk to your child's teacher, think about what they're needing. Some schools will already have started an MTSS process, which is a separate process that if they're responding to, sometimes they may be reluctant, but you can always refer a child for special education. And sometimes teachers have already started using accommodations, and you want to make sure those are formally documented in a 504 plan. So if you know that your child's teacher is pulling them aside and providing extra support to allow them equal access, you want to make sure that you start talking to them about what they need, because if they go to the new teacher, if that teacher leaves suddenly, they wouldn't be able to get that. So you want to make sure that what your child is getting is documented. And it may be that you request an IEP, and as they go through the IEP process, you realize that they don't need specialized education, but they do need accommodations to access their education. And it is okay to request. Some people will also request a 504 plan, and they'll get the accommodations in place, and then they'll realize that their kiddo needs specialized instruction. So definitely talk to your team and talk about what you're seeing with your kiddo, what support you're having to provide, like with homework, what you think they would benefit from. But definitely, if you feel like your child is behind and they need special education, I would definitely refer them for that. And if it turns out they don't need one, you could ask for a 504 then. If you think they just need accommodations, then go ahead and ask straight for the 504. The difference is mainly the specialized instruction and services. 504s, while I don't believe there's any standardized renewal, they really should be looked at yearly, and most school districts will look at them yearly. but you can always request as the parent that you come together and meet again. Ms. Davis, if you will fill out our contact form, we'll make sure that information gets to you. Andrea, can you pull up the contact form and put it in the chat, please?
I also have a link to more information I'll share as well.
There is not a specific timeline for 504 meetings the way that there is for IEPs. A lot more of 504 plans is left up to individual districts, and so individual districts may have some requirements, but it is not standardized across the board. Though I will say that the timelines for IEPs is also not standardized across states either. So I would definitely ask your district what their policy is, because it does range pretty heavily from district. Most people are expected to complete things in a reasonable amount of time. And I, similar to many of you, don't love that as an answer, because obviously my definition of a reasonable amount of time might be different from everybody else's.
Yeah, and I would say if you feel like it's not happening in a reasonable amount of time, or you've hit any barriers, it might be time to look at the who you're going to call or who you're going to write list and see who's next in line to reach out to. If you're not having success with a teacher, or the teacher doesn't understand what you're asking, you may consider going to the school counselor or the principal and seeing if you have success there.
We have a question in the chat about how, not in the chat, in the Q&A, about how you would suggest maintaining accountability and tracking use of accommodations and supports. That really depends on your specific kiddo and what accommodation it is, and how, what they're using and why. Always be mindful when they put in a 504 plan or an IEP, when they said as requested, or something that requires a child to ask for an accommodation. And, you know, if that is not appropriate, that's not appropriate for every child. Have that taken out. We've seen that quite a bit where they put as a child request, and some accommodations are not ones that, you know, a child should have to ask for. But I would strongly suggest that you, in terms of maintaining accountability and tracking use of, if you're talking about something specific, if you will fill out our contact form, that would be super helpful. And we can help you specifically, because it really depends, right? Because, you know, you might want to track, are they, you know, what type of fidget type thing do they have access? Because they may just have open access to a fidget toy that they could use. And unlike IEPs that are data driven, you know, most teachers are not taking data on the use of 504 accommodations. But you do want to make sure they're providing them. So if you have concerns about that, please reach out to us for support.
And I will say one tip that I have found helpful in the past is when you go to a 504 meeting with your child's school, finding someone within the staff to be accountable for implementing the 504 plan can be really helpful. And you can also have a contact person to go to ask for information on whether these things are useful or not, so that you'll be informed enough to build upon it at the next meeting.
Well, and if you have any questions at all, you should be able to go to them. Hopefully, one of the biggest things and one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give you is to build a relationship with your child's teachers. And if you are a teacher, build a relationship with your families, so that you can just ask and feel like, you know, that they, you know, you want to assume that everybody has your child's best interest at heart. But we should be able to have open and honest dialogue about whether accommodations are occurring. And also, you know, if your child is meant to sit in the front and you go to school one day for a conference and you see that they're at the back, you know, bring that to somebody's attention. And it's always a good idea to give a teacher a copy, because while the 504 coordinator or sometimes the school counselor is supposed to, they have a lot of students and a lot of people to touch base with. And sometimes stuff gets missed. So always keep a copy, you know, you can give a copy. I've even seen a family make a fabulous PowerPoint to give to their child's teachers regarding that child's specific needs. And I found that to be very like standout. Even I remember what was in that, in that PowerPoint to help that kiddo. So, you know, it's okay. If you have a 504 or an IEP, to make like a little list and give them. As far as when you start a new school year, typically, yes, the 504 accommodations will remain in place until they hold a new meeting. Now, if you know that your child is making a new like big transition, like we're moving from elementary to middle school, and you think that they're going to need some additional accommodations, especially if your child's going from like not changing classroom environments to suddenly we're switching classes, and you know, you can ask for a meeting to discuss those types of things to add additional accommodations in place. Does anybody have any other questions? We have a few minutes if you have any more, but if not, thank you guys for coming. Please look in your emails for you won't get an email until tomorrow, because our secretary is out today, but you will get it tomorrow. We will send you a copy of everything. And we look forward to seeing you guys at our next one. Stay tuned to our event calendar. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up, and I will send it out in the follow-up email as well, so that you guys can click it and see.
Thank you
guys
all for
are
your
very
time
welcome.
today. Yes, thank you.
Thank you guys too. We appreciate you guys coming and taking the time to listen. And we have some other webinars coming up on IEPs, and I know there's some family to family ones coming up too. So, you know, keep an eye, keep tuned in, and definitely feel free to contact us with anything that comes up that you guys need support with. I hope you guys have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.